Hey, you're listening to the VHS Ate My Brain podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Haunt. I'm the author of a bunch of books and comics and magazine stuff, all kinds of things. But this is all about a book I wrote called VHS Ate My Brain. There's also a revised edition, and recently there's been a sequel, VHS Ate My Brain 2, The Revenge. And I post a lot of stuff on YouTube under the name Planet Hex, so do check out my show on there as well. This past weekend, I went back to Alfreton, back to the 80s video shop, one of my favorite places in the absolute world. I love that place. I think from anyone that's seen my content or read my books that you're going to be aware that I love the 80s video shop. It's run by Rob Lane from the Straight to Video podcast and a bunch of other projects. He's done music projects. He's in a bunch of bands. The man is a legend. And also Chris Annabelle, who is the director of the movie One Night Rental, which was actually shot in the store. And there's loads of stuff coming from them in the future. It's just a wonderful place to be. So if you're not familiar with the 80s video shop, you've clearly not listened to my podcast or read my books before or seen any of my videos because I talk about the damn place a lot. So it is a VHS store museum. It's done up like an old video rental store. It's got a museum in the main room full of VHS tapes, and the counters there, and there's movies going. Lots of stuff to check out in there. There's also merchandise and like a gift shop area in there as well. Behind that, there is a escape room themed around American Werewolf in London, and there's also an 80s/90s themed kids' bedroom recreation that actually has Rob's old curtains and bedding in it. They're the genuine thing. They're not reproductions or picked up from eBay. They're Rob's old stuff. There is a screening room which has its own big screen. It's all done up like the Overlook Hotel, and it's just amazing. It's fantastic. So this past weekend, on Saturday, the 5th of October, it was Tapestock 2 taking place at the 80s video shop. Now, there was a Tapestock 2 event back in 2019, but then we all know what happened after 2019, don't we? That all got a bit weird. So it was going to be put on by the Video Club. It's just Facebook group, which is surprisingly good. I'm growing increasingly wary of social media sites like Facebook just after everything that happened with Twitter, stroke X, stroke whatever the hell it's called now. And things are just getting a bit weird on social media, I find. So I'm a little bit cynical about it at the moment. However, I do still love podcasts, and I still absolutely adore YouTube. I think they are great resources for everyone of differing tastes, differing outlooks, and I just like to immerse myself in those worlds now. But yeah, I'm a bit wary of main social media outlets. So it was put on by the Video Club guys, Gary Thompson, the dude, and the 80s Video Store guys, and it was just going to be a day of cool stuff. So I was lucky enough to go and do a book signing there. So I had VHS Ate My Brain Revised Edition and VHS Ate My Brain 2 there with me, and there were going to be screenings all day. There was going to be trailers on. There was going to be movies being shown. There would be an 80s movie quiz and just the opportunity to hang out with people from the Facebook group. And it's got over 3,000 members, so there's a lot of interest in that group. And it was ever so exciting to be part of it. I set off pretty early Saturday morning. This is after trying to figure out how I could best take 60 copies of my books with me. I wasn't using the car, I was going by train. Last time I did this for the launch of VHS Ate My Brain Revised Edition, I took a gigantic suitcase with me, which was just not practical. So I needed a different setup this time. And after many configurations and much Tetrising of books and other stuff I needed, like deodorant and phone charger and things like that in my bag. After all that, I managed to plump for a large shopping bag which fit everything in perfectly, fit a load of books in perfectly, and my rucksack, which also fit a stack of books in there, and just about managed it. I was going there with the hope of just coming home with less than I took. So that was a mission accomplished, I can tell you. But anyway, I had a really cool journey there, really nice, simple, easy-going journey. I could relax, gather my thoughts, and try and work up some social energy and work up my social battery. I'm not a particularly sociable person. I do have anxiety, I have ADHD as well, and there's a bunch of stuff going on in my head all the time. So sometimes I do find it difficult in social situations, but I think I pulled it off this time. I knew I had to be the writer, I had to be the Planet Hex guy. It had to be the podcaster, and that's cool. I love doing that. I love showing that side of myself, but it does take a little bit of time for me to work up to the having enough energy to do that for a prolonged period of time. But it was a really really satisfying day. So anyway, I got to Alfreton. Robert said turn up for about 11. Okay, I can do that, but I'll make sure I set off early so I don't get there too late. Because I was expecting I'd get there just before it opened. Thankfully, I didn't have much setup to do. I'd got my backdrop with like the melting skulls and stuff on it that you may have seen sometimes on my Planet Hex channel. I'd got the books, I got the bookmarks, I got some bags and that sort of thing, and a sign with the prices on for the book. So it didn't take me that long to set up. That was cool. So I arrived in Alfreton and walked through Alfreton slowly, very slowly. I walked through Alfreton because of the weight of these bags was quite incredible. I mean, I do weights on a regular basis at home, but man, these were difficult things to carry. I headed through Alfreton, which I do have a fondness for. It's like many small town areas in England now. There's a lot of closed shops. There's a lot of things that are just empty units because rents are astronomical in small towns. You know, landlords are trying to charge big city rents in small towns, and it's just not going to happen. So there's always lots of empty units at the moment. It's been that way since COVID. I mean, it was going that way before COVID, really, but since the COVID era, things have gone a bit weird in small towns. So you'll often see a lot of empty units, but that doesn't mean those small towns are not thriving. And Alfreton is a town that, to me, as an outsider, the times I've been there, it always seems to be thriving. It's a cool place. And for retro hunters as well, there's loads of charity shops, so you never know what you're going to find there. Although, what I can guarantee is you're not going to find any VHS tapes there. That's for sure. So I arrived at the 80s video shop, and it was a little bit awkward, to be honest, because there was a lady stood right outside the door waiting for an Uber. And I was stood about 3 feet away from her. And she looked over and smiled in a friendly manner. And I had to reassure her that I'm not being weird. I'm waiting to go in here. Sorry. And she's like, oh, no, it's fine. It's fine. Are you waiting for it? You're not waiting for an Uber then? Like, no, I'm waiting to go into an event in here. So we stood in awkward silence for a bit. I messaged Rob and said, I'm here stupidly early. It was like 10:30. So he said, oh, yeah, outside, do you? Like, yeah, I'm outside. So he came and let me in very kindly. I went upstairs. We caught up. Rob is such a nice guy to catch up with. He's so easygoing. I totally see why literally everyone on the planet loves this guy. He is the most genuine, lovely, down to earth guy you could meet. You know, even though he's played so many shows and done these podcasts with amazing people, and is such an outgoing person, he's so down to earth and chill, and that's just the best thing to ease you into a day like that. So I went in, set up, caught up with Rob, and by this time it was about 11 a.m. So, okay, I'm just going to go grab an early lunch, get my supplies for the day. The 80 video shop had supplied me and the tape dealers there with bottles of water, which was really kind. But I went and got some lunch from the shops nearby. I'm particularly fond of Home Bargains in Alfreton because it's so big. It's such a large such a large branch of Home Bargains. It has its own cafe. That's how big it is. Now, if you know Home Bargains, it's just a discount store, but to have one with its own cafe and toilet facilities in it, it's like, okay, this is serious. This is a large scale Home Bargains. So I went and picked up some stuff there, including surprisingly some Bullseye themed crisps. If you're not familiar with Bullseye, it was a 1980s, possibly early 90s as well, game show based around darts. It was very dull Sunday afternoon viewing, but it was endearing in its own kind of rundown way. But yeah, there was some crisps themed around Bully from Bullseye. I thought, okay, I'm going to try these. I got some supplies, walked back around the corner into the 80s video shop, heard voices upstairs. I thought, oh, more dealers have arrived. No, there were so many people hanging outside the shop that the event had started early, and I was like 20 minutes late for being at my table. So, oh my God, it's busy already. There were people buying and selling tapes. There was dealing going on. There's trading going on. People catching up. There's people meeting for the first time. Already the atmosphere was electric. So I sat behind my table, and I was halfway through a mouthful of sandwich. And while eating, I'd been sat down for about 5 seconds, and a gentleman came up to meet me and say, I love your channel. I love your books. This is really cool to meet you. And had a bit of a chat. And it was so cool. Such a surprise to meet a fan so quickly. So thank you so much. That was really lovely. And it just carried on from there. Throughout the day, more and more people came. Rob was telling me that there were people coming from all over the country to hang out at the 80s video shop for Tapestock too. And he wasn't wrong. There were people coming from Scotland, London, all over the place. I have talked about this on my Planet Hex channel. I've done a video about the day with some footage on there, so do go and check that out if you'd like to see some of the stuff that was going on. But on this episode of the podcast, I thought I would go a bit more into detail of the day itself. I wasn't sure what to expect. I didn't know if people would want to pick up the books at all, if they'd just be there for tapes, but loads of people wanted to come and chat about movies. Lots of people picked up the books. Surprising number of people bought the first book, which I thought was cool. You know, I'm absolutely cool with that. But I thought there would be more interest in the sequel. But I guess not everyone has read the first one. So it's just an interesting thing. This is my first time at a convention doing an appearance like this. So it was a really interesting experiment for me to do that and just see how things would go. And to be honest, they went great. I was interviewed for a documentary. I had lots of people introduce themselves that had watched my stuff. Saw friends that I was already familiar with there. That was really cool. Signed a bunch of books. Took part in the quiz. And won it. I took part in the 80s movie quiz and I did win that. Thanks. That was awesome. Also slightly embarrassing. I did take part like everyone else, but I was thinking, I'm appearing at this. This seems a bit odd, but it was really cool to win. Love the video club T-shirt that I won, and the big prize that I won from completing that, getting the most answers in that quiz, which I only got 13 out of 20. So it wasn't like I got 20 out of 20. But the other prize was a really cool 80s quad poster of Karate Kid 2. And I've got to find I've still got to find a frame for it that's big enough because it's huge. It's going to go up in the kitchen. It's going to replace the Max Headroom print I've got up in there. That's going to go elsewhere in the house because I do love that Max Headroom print. It's so cool. So that's going to go up there, and that was that was really nice. But everyone was the best. The attitude there on the day was so fun. It was really nice to be among my tribe, and this is something I wish everyone in this scene, in this niche interest of ours, could get to experience, is to be around the people that know your references. I met Gemma Gore, who's on Instagram and whatnot, and it was talking to her about the appeal of things like Tales from the Quadhead Zone and Black Devil Doll from Hell and all the SOV horror movies. And we were discussing attempting to explain to friends and loved ones our appreciation for this stuff and why we like it. And it was really, really entertaining. I met a bunch of people there that knew their stuff, some lengthy conversations about tapes and movies and the experience of video stores. Met a guy that had started writing his own book on the experience of being in video stores and working in video stores. And I was really excited by that. It's the knowledge that I've been a bit of a part of this scene just by telling my own stories through the books and through YouTube and now this podcast as well. It's just a really beautiful thing to know that there are other people out there that share these interests and that I can talk to on the same level about these things with. It's really, really satisfying. Also going on there, like I said, there was some movie screenings going on in the screening room. There were movies on all day, broken up by trailer compilations. Did send some of my trailers in. They may have got played in there, but I was in the main room for most of the day. There was a very rare screening of Tapehead, the ultra low budget movie. Just honestly look it up. You've got to experience that for yourself. There was the Running Man. There's Videodrome going on. There was cool stuff all day. And what did it open with? It opened with 976 Evil. If you've never seen 976 Evil, do check it out. It's a good, very much of its time horror movie from the, I think it was the late 80s. And it was a directorial debut of one Robert Englund, otherwise known as Freddy Krueger. So do check that out if you have never watched it. The sequel sucks, but the first one is eminently watchable, and I do recommend that. So that was on the big screening there, which was nice. There was the Tapehead screening, and there was all this, just hanging out with people that get it. And that was so good. These are the people that I wrote these books for. Well, technically, I wrote them just for myself. I didn't really think anyone was going to read the first one, as I've mentioned in previous episodes. But these are the people that I could really connect with over this stuff. And it was just a beautiful, beautiful experience. And I really hope there's another one next year because I would absolutely go along to that. Not sure if I'd have a table again. I may just go and hang out and join in with the screenings and stuff this time because it'd be fun to just be there as a fan, which I most definitely definitely am. As things were moved on through the day, the crowd thinned out a little. There'd been families in, there'd been groups in, there'd been people from all over the place coming in. But as the day wore on, it thinned out to maybe a dozen people in the 80s video store, hanging out, being silly, quoting movies, talking about tapes, dealing tapes, going through all Vin's stuff. The dealer Vin that was next to me had some really cool things. I managed to refrain from buying a bunch of tapes. I need to save some money for a trip or going on soon, so I couldn't really indulge in those. But it was so tempting. There was such cool things there, including there's a big box of Psychic Killer, which I absolutely adore. I know it's not the most loved horror movie in the world, but it has one of the most nihilistic endings, and I love the ending of that movie dearly. So the day moved on, things became a bit more chilled. Everyone was just still having a great time. The vibe in there was so cool, friendly, respectful, and fun. There was a lot of fun going on. People were playing video games that are littered around the place as well, and just enjoying all the stuff that was there, checking out all the tapes, checking out the merchandise. There was a rack of magazines there, and just having a great time hanging out. I packed up eventually and set off back and bid a rather bittersweet farewell to it because I was having such a great time. But I know I needed to get back to Nottingham. Everyone that was there that was going to buy my books had picked some up, and I was really grateful for that. I was so grateful that anyone had even shown any interest in it. And it was even more grateful that people had come and chatted. That was so fun to be able to really unload all this arcane knowledge of old VHS tapes with people that understood it and got it. So I headed back through Alfreton with my bags much lighter. So thank you ever so much for that. That was a lot easier to get back. And headed back to their train station. Plenty of time for my train home. Of course, that was delayed. And when it finally arrived, half an hour late, if not more, it was absolutely packed to the brim. The Saturday night crowd. I think, God, why is this so busy? Turned out the train after it had been cancelled, so everyone had piled onto this one. So I stood up all the way back to Nottingham. Granted, on the way back it was only like 2 stops, but it was still about half an hour I was stood up, leaning against people's body parts and trying not to look over people's shoulders at their phones when I was, almost falling over. It was chaotic, the trip back to Nottingham, but then I finally got back to Nottingham and got a taxi at the station. Now, may not seem that exciting, but what I do have to share with you is that the taxi driver wanted to inform me along the way home that he wanted to have sex with Turkish airline stewardesses and hoped they would leave their uniforms on. I had to share the horror of that with you because it freaked me out. I got home, I got changed and showered and tried to gather my thoughts and transfer the video and photos and stuff onto my computer so I could make the video that is now on YouTube. Please do go and check that out.
Be afraid, be very afraid. It's time for the weekly rentals.
Which means it's time for this week's rentals, of course. So for this week's rentals, I'm going to give you 2 movies that I love dearly, but I don't think anyone else would. Now, I know the taste in movies is subjective, but these are 2 that I would watch regularly as a teenager. One, because I'd seen the trailer for it about 1,000,000 times, and one, because I bought it because the cover looked cool. So the first one is going to be Warrior of the Lost World, a 1985 Mad Max ripoff starring Robert Ginty, Persis Kambata, and Donald Pleasance in the role as the bad guy, the evil despot Prosser. So it's literally a Mad Max ripoff. There's psycho gangs all over a wasteland. The Mad Max type character played by Robert Ginty is actually on a motorbike, a talking motorbike that's got like a cutesy voice to it, but it's covered in rocket launchers and guns and all sorts. This bike, and it's amazing. Although watching it back as an adult, it's not that amazing. It's actually really, really bad. But at the time, I loved it. So I saw the trailer to this on a cheap copy of The Hills Have Eyes Part 2. Yes, I told you I watched crap. I watched that tape a lot because I could never find a cheap copy of the first one, and it had on the front the trailer for Warrior of the Lost World, which I thought looked like the greatest thing ever, full of explosions, a souped-up bike with a robot voice, a hero blowing stuff up, weird post-apocalyptic gangs and some strange cult stuff going on. And that's where Persis Kambata started showing up. If you remember, she was the bald character in the Star Trek the Motion Picture, the first Star Trek movie, and that was a lot of fun. But I did find a copy of it at the market store that used to sell impressionable kids like me to 18 movies. So I was always finding horror movies and stuff there. Managed to find a copy of Warrior of the Lost World, but it did not have its cover. Although it did have a cover. The cover it had was a page torn out of a magazine that was an advert for the movie. But it was the official tape inside. And I thought that just made it cooler to me. That made it way more exciting for some reason because it was different. But what made me laugh was that the artwork used for Warrior of the Lost World in this trade ad was absolutely sod all to do with the movie that was on the tape. It showed the hero on the bike, but the hero was like a chrome-clad cyborg, and there was spaceships and loads of other robots and stuff going on, and none of that was in the movie. But I was really pleased to get a copy. Upon watching it, I found it to be a bit silly, but it did scratch all the itches that the trailer gave me. Not that it was full of bugs or something. That got weird. But it was a good, fun movie. If you can track it down and if you have the stomach for Mad Max knockoffs that are really not trying to hide that they are knockoffs of Mad Max, do check out Warrior of the Lost World. Now, my second choice tonight, I originally got this just for the cover, but I would really love to share this with people. It's a vampire movie called Subspecies. This is it was from Charles Band & Co., the company that would eventually become Full Moon Pictures, and this is a really, really cool vampire movie, a really strong take on the vampire mythos. So you've got the vampire in it, Radu, who instead of being like a glamorous, overly beautiful person, well manicured and so on, he's an aged, goblin-esque freak with a shock of dark hair and elongated fingers and a really deep vampire-style accent. They've gone full on with this. This is one of those movies from the Full Moonstruck Empire Pictures people that looks a lot bigger than it really is. There's some real thought that's gone into the cinematography, the location work, the direction of it is excellent. The script is strong as well. There's some really cool fantasy and horror elements that go into the Subspecies movies. And this first one is really strong in terms of visuals and how the story pulls you in. It also has some very cool stop motion work in it of these little creatures, these little subspecies creatures, which are also performed by actors in suits in some close-ups, and you really need to see it. What they reminded me of was the little creatures from The Gate, the little goblin-y trolley type creatures from The Gate, and it's just a great movie. I really enjoy all of the Subspecies series, but I do recommend that one to start with. It's a really strong movie, and the sequels just get better. I know they're not all as loved as the first one, but I have a great respect for these. There's even a fifth one that has just been released in recent months, and it even got a limited cinema run in the States. And that's just awesome that these things are still going. So do check out Warrior of the Lost World, if you can take it, and Subspecies, which is still awesome to this day. And that's this week's Rentals. So thank you for joining me for this episode of the VHS Ate My Brain podcast. As mentioned at the start, I am Andrew Hornt. I wrote some books. I do some stuff on YouTube. I make music sometimes and do a load of other weird stuff to stop me getting too bored of being middle-aged and, having to do all the stuff that comes with being middle-aged. And I've had a great time this weekend. Tapestock 2 was epic. It was great to be back at the 80s video shop. The place is looking amazing. And I really hope there is going to be more events like this in the months and years to come. Long may it continue. So yes, please do like and subscribe to the VHS Ate My Brain podcast if you haven't already, if you enjoy this. You can also check out my YouTube channel, Planet Hex, where I talk about VHS tapes, comics, games, music, the writing life, and life in general as a big, bald dog. Thank you for joining me for this episode of VHS Ate My Brain.